Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using code NEST. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
Hello and welcome to another session of Behind Enemy Lines, as I'm very happy to collab here with my man Robert Land, Houston Sports Hawk fan. We got his link right now. Robert, I like to just say this at the top before I say hello to you. Please show some love to him. I've got a link directly to his YouTube channel right down here in the description section, right at the top line. So if we can all do a favor to Robert coming on in, it's good to do it. Just chopped it up with him on his side. Click that link. Show some love to him. Sub on up over there to him, and as he covers, I'm getting not just Texans. You're in on Astros and all that stuff. Then at that point, right?
Oh yeah, covering Astros, Rockets, and hey, it's a fun time. I mean, just very privileged. Houston sports over the last few years. As somebody that's a long time, I grew up in Houston in the '70s and '80s, so I've lived through a lot. This has been a real golden era, not just with the three big sports, but even Houston Cougars basketball's turned into quite a dynasty too, and we talk about them occasionally as well. But yeah, it's been fun, and I know the people in Seattle might not appreciate the Astros as much, but it's been a hell of a ride, and just real proud of what they've done for the first time. Not being in the playoffs in about 9 years is amazing.
It is. It sure must be fun to have so many different sports to cover too. We lost the Sonics, and you feel that hole when that time of year comes along. You're like, what's on? There's hockey. I guess we got the hockey. But hey, at least the Astro Mariner rivalry is going strong, man. That thing looks like it's cooked up for now in the future, and it's not calming down anytime soon.
Yeah, you and I were talking offline. Was a huge fan of the Sonics. Just really not happy with what happened to them. I'm hoping in the next few years we'll hear about. I just keep waiting and waiting for the announcement. You know, they're going to bring back Seattle, but best fan base of any NBA team. I mean, Rockets would face them, and that was a rivalry, and Seattle was our kryptonite over the years. And so we know very well about the Sonics as Houstonians. So just hoping something happens there. And of course, we're kind of the last surviving era of the Sonics with Kevin Durant and Jeff Green, both on the Rockets as teammates this year, going back to that era.
Keeping it going, former first-round picks. That's right on that side of it. I forgot that Durant had gone to Rockets. That's interesting on that one. But yeah, some pretty classic series. Late '80s there with Elijah one, the '90s and Elijah one there too. I think we had it going back and forth on that. There were some good battles in on that. We are talking today, Robert, though, about your Texans franchise. And I think as we get into this matchup, it's one thing, but it's also a little bit of let's get into the sort of the state of where your franchise finds itself a little bit here. We on the outside, we're looking in at the Bill O'Brien years and shaking our head and feeling bad for you guys, going, man, it's tough. Somebody let the crazy man with the keys to the car. Who did that? And then he put you guys in peril. He burned everything down as he left shop, right? He like lights a few things on fire, kicks out a window, and he's like, get your salary cap in some bad place. But it now does feel like you guys have gotten on the right section. You got the right coach, salary cap in a good spot. You certainly have your quarterback. You got to be feeling really good about the state of this franchise and where things are headed, don't you?
Yeah, it's crazy how it ended up, and it's weird how the NFL can turn on you on a dime. I mean, Bill O'Brien had basically burned the house down. He had brought in this preacher, Jack Easterby, to sort of run the franchise, and it was just all blowing up. I mean, the Deshaun mess happened. I mean, that was a mess on both sides. And then Easterby basically ends up being the impetus finally for getting Bill O'Brien out. And, you know, in a way, do we have to thank him? I don't know. But, you know, he turned it into a disaster. And then they sort of land on their feet with the hiring of D'Amico and the drafting of Stroud. And it was just like over one offseason, D'Amico and Stroud. And it was like the whole fan base was getting strangled. And all of a sudden you got air again. I mean, think about this, Brandon. The Texans had like a 20 or 30,000 season ticket holder waiting list or something like that prior to the disaster at the end of the O'Brien era. And then everybody at the end, they were calling up people. Hey, we got these openings, because people were just giving up their season tickets, and people were saying, "Oh, I don't want him now. I don't care." And Cal McNair, who had taken over as owner from his dad Bob, was offering pizzas and stuff like that to get people to come to games. At that point, I mean, it was nuts, and it was like you used to just have to beg to get tickets to the Texans. I mean, it was, it's Houston, Texas. This is football. I mean, how has this happened? But that's how bad it was. And then all of a sudden, D'Amico and Stroud came, and just positive ray of light type of people. And yeah, it's a totally different atmosphere here. And Houston has got big expectations this year, and luckily they've turned it around. We can get into it, but seems like they're back a little bit on track the last couple of games.
Certainly, even the national perspective coming into this optimism, where you would definitely have a few of the pundits out there that like to have them as kind of the sexy pick for a Super Bowl team to pair there from the AFC this year. So not only is it that you guys are feeling good about it, but that's also, I think, where a lot of the national perspective sees this team. You brought up C.J. Stroud, who was a guy that I loved coming out of college. I put a blue chip grade, which I only put a couple of those out every year across the board. That was a part of a deep quarterback class. I thought he was the best of the group. And he certainly had a great first year. Last year was a little bit of a downturn, but maybe not his fault. Where are you at on the perspective of CJ from your standpoint on how you see him and where he's at in his career?
Yeah, one thing you learn about quarterbacks over the years, and you're seeing it with Sam Darnold, we see it with Baker Mayfield. You learn that you have to sort of let it play out a little bit. And CJ Stroud, the first 3 games of this year, I'm starting to get a little worried because it just kept trending down, and there were other factors involved for sure. But you have to be honest with yourself. CJ was part of the problem. I mean, there were times where he was holding onto the ball too long. People talk about the sacks and the protection. Some of that's his fault. There was partly him to blame on some of that stuff going back to last year as well. But the key was, and if you're outside of Houston, you might not know the full story, but they fired their OC and offensive line coach at the end of last year. And it was all the fan base's feeling that those 2 guys needed to go. It didn't look good. I mean, Bobby Slowick, it looked good the first year, but he was somebody that just was not adjusting well, either in game or game to game. There was other issues as we were watching this play out. The offensive line coach, there was talk after he was gone that this was a guy that almost retired the year before, and it looked like somebody that was disinterested was controlling our offensive line last year, because guys were not, a lot of it was just communication issues. There were guys that had talent issues, but the communication, guys just, not communicating on stunts and things like that. That was a lot of the problem. If you really get down to some of those sacks, it was stunts, and it wasn't just the offensive line, and the offensive line took a lot of the blame. Like I said, Stroud was part of the problem, but the running back, tight end, the protection schemes, the guys that they had blocking in those protection schemes, there was all sorts of issues. So this offensive line took, the players took a lot of the heat, where I think this was partly the coaching, and it's been night and day with the new offensive line coach specifically. He's doing a hell of a job. Cole Popovich, for people in Seattle, you might not know his name. He was an assistant with the Texans last year, but he worked in New England for a while under Scarnecchia, who's a legend in the business. And we wondered, like, oh, do we have somebody now that knows what he's doing? Because, apparently he wasn't telling anybody to do the right things last year. But sometimes, this, if anybody out there that's, got their own job, sometimes you got to do stuff that your boss is telling you and you don't agree with. And maybe that was going on. But the offensive line looks way better. The first 3 weeks, there was a little bit of an adjustment period, some stuff going on, but we're starting to see the offensive line really come together the last couple of weeks, averaging almost 150 yards in rushing the last 2 weeks.
Very impressive, especially with the fact it's not necessarily you have a de facto star running back at the position either on that, carrying the water, so to speak. How has Chubb looked as a guy that's had a couple of multiple lower leg injuries back to college and in the pros? Has he bounced back? I mean, give me maybe a kind of percentage you see as far as his percentage of what he was when he was in Cleveland, at times playing like a top 3 running back in the sport, depending on the year you might look at.
He's not the guy from Cleveland. I don't know if that guy's coming back, but we're seeing some progress from week to week. It's an injury that takes time to heal. Uh, will he continue to improve as the season goes along? That should be interesting. I don't think we're going to get the old Chubb back, but this is somebody that can at least fall forward and get you 3 or 4 yards. And sometimes that's all you need. And that's what they weren't getting much outside of from anybody but Joe Mixon last year. And that was a concern with Joe Mixon. I mean, this was a huge storyline, as you can imagine, because Joe Mixon was incredible behind a bad offensive line last year. And it's like, oh no, we're going into this season, and it's maybe a washed up Nick Chubb and some other guys that we just can't depend on. But Chubb's starting to show stuff. The story has been, though, Bobby Marks, the 3rd-round pick. He looks really good. Can do multiple things: pass catcher, pass blocker. He's playing more and more. He wasn't playing as much as the fans wanted to see him the first couple of weeks. There were guys out there that just literally should not have been out there, and took a lot of criticism from the fan base and the media. It was like, why are these guys playing instead of a guy that you drafted in the 3rd round or Nick Chubb? So that's a story here as well, as I think Bobby Marks has started to show something. The numbers weren't huge last week as far as the rushing attack, but it's just, he's giving you stuff in the pass game that the Texans haven't gotten in the last few years out of a running back.
And one of the keys we talked on your last show on this matchup is how we defend our running backs out of the backfield as pass catchers. Did better last week, but have had some games this year that have been a bit of a struggle on that. And a place that I would estimate that your Texans are probably going to target us in this game and make a bit of a point of emphasis in how you look to go at us.
Yeah, Nick Chubb also, he's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And he just knows what he's doing. To have a veteran like that, he's going to start. But don't be surprised if you see more Bobby Marks out on the field than Nick Chubb if you're a Seahawks fan, because they really love what Marks is doing. But Chubb, reliable, and you're kind of saving his legs too, as a veteran that has had some of the injuries. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the running game. I talked about this a little bit in the show that we did on Thursday, but for me on Thursday, for Seattle fans that we'll see it another day, but just how that's really like what might decide the game is if the Texans can get the running game going, because Seattle's run defense is so good. I just think, after seeing what Houston's done the last couple of weeks and seeing the offensive line really come on, they're just way better run blocking. We actually see push. Can you imagine that, Brandon? We actually see push going forward in our offensive line, which we did not see last year, and not just from the offensive line, because people they always sort of get into, the running game, it's about the offensive line. No, we're seeing wide receivers like knocking guys 5 yards back. We're seeing tight ends doing their job better, aka Dalton Schultz, our number 1 tight end. We're seeing running backs making holes as well. I mean, everybody's doing it, and it's just it's almost a mind change as well as anything. Just the aggression from that part of the game is totally different this year than we saw last year.
Yeah, and I can't imagine it, because we don't do that here either. So it's been a couple years since I've gotten to see consistent holes being opened up with our offensive line in a little bit of time, in a hot minute, if you were. But it's when it happens, man, it helps out the offense so much more versus when you get the stalemates, or what we get a lot of is penetration in the backfield at times. Running backs almost getting hit right after they get the ball, and those type of deals. And I think that when you talk about stopping the run, big thing with what Seattle's done this year, and we've gotten away with it and being so good at stopping the run. I think we're 31st right now in the infrequency by which we stack the box. So it's on that back of a lot of times the 6-man fronts, 4 down linemen, 2 linebacker. You've got your base guys up there. Can you take advantage of that? And I think you guys are definitely going to try to make it a point of emphasis, like getting attacking the running backs out of the backfield passing game. I think you'll make a point of emphasis in this. And as much of might be the key on this game as anything else. We were talking last one. I was telling you the key for me was how we ran the ball. Maybe it's just who can run the ball better in this game, Robert, may determine really. I know that's old cliche way of putting it, but we are still in an age where passing is a lot of times still ruling the day. Do you maybe have a look at that in this way? And that this maybe the running game will be the make or break for either whoever can kind of end out maybe more rushes as far as consistency goes, the one who maybe carry the day.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's going to play a big part. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's what happens up front a lot of times. And, you guys rely quite a bit on the play actions, and to make the play action work, you got to have a little bit ability to run the football. The Texans' only bad game this year against the run. It was very strange. I don't know what the plan was, but everybody saw it because it was on Monday Night Football, unfortunately. But Tampa just gashed the Texans, and for some reason, the Texans were playing their guy, the D line out wide. It was like these huge splits, and they were just almost allowing these big holes to be opened up. And you know, Tampa's running back a little bit underrated. I know he's banged up right now, but he was very good. So I got to give him credit. But a lot of it was just the Texans linebackers at the second level, and it just felt like the game plan wasn't that good. Otherwise, the Texans throughout D'Amico's tenure, their run defense has been really solid, really not more than solid. They've been very good.
Yeah, I think it's those gaps you talk about. It's sort of the modernization of these defensive lines, where it's the sort of the morphing of the 3 to the 3-4 and the 4-3. So you take your 2 inside defensive tackles and you have a 1 tech and a 3 tech, and then you have the outside linebackers like you would in a 3-4 defense. But then oftentimes you're leaving this natural gap between the edge rushers and the defensive tackle, especially to the one tech who's kind of shaded between the center and the right guard, like they're shaded in there. So there's this natural gap there where that linebacker's got to fill. They've got to be able to 2 gap and control either direction on it. And it's like a lot you're asking of your defensive line and linebackers to kind of pull that off versus the old school days when you had more of a lesser space to have to cover in order to make sure you're keeping yourself clean in the running game, especially outside zone, which really stretches you and widens you out. In addition to this, it can make it tough.
One of the things that you'll see with the Texans is D'Amico, he puts a lot of emphasis on, linebackers making plays as well, because he's sending 4, and those 4 guys are basically, hey, you go forward, do what you do. And so some of it's on the linebackers, but Will Anderson, who should be considered a little bit at this point in defensive player of the year, at least in the conversation. I'm not saying he is, but quietly having a fantastic year. And I think a lot of what the Texans are doing on defense gets missed because they're number 1 in points allowed, 12 points per game. And it's a pretty decent margin between them and number 2. And here's the other thing that I think you got to look at with the Texans defense. And again, I'll help you because I don't think this is something that other fan bases would understand. In the offseason, the Texans traded their bust first-round pick offensive lineman Kenyon Green to the Eagles for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, Gardner-Johnson won the championship with the Eagles, a ton of interceptions, but the Texans found out that Gardner-Johnson wasn't exactly accountable for stuff. And there was word that got out after they released him following the first 3 games. And, this was a bombshell that you weren't expecting this. He was supposed to really help the secondary. There were 3 touchdowns in the first 3 games that Gardner-Johnson, it was sort of leaked that it was a blown assignment from him. And those games were 1-score games. I mean, we're talking about the Texans are 0-3, or maybe the Texans are 3-0, or at least 2-1 if Gardner-Johnson isn't the safety. And MJ Stewart comes in, backup. He's been a backup with the Texans for a while. And you're just not seeing those type of busts. It just seems like everything's a little bit more solid on the back end. I mean, you would look and you would go, oh, was it this guy? And we start blaming guys that had played really well last year. And then you find out, no, they weren't the one that was supposed to have that responsibility. That was Gardner-Johnson. And Gardner-Johnson was like, mad at one of the players on the Texans' salary, supposedly. He was not taking accountability. He was going out. I mean, he just everything that could go wrong in a locker room happened. And then, he goes over to the Ravens, and this week the Ravens had him on the practice squad and they just, outright let him go. That's how much Gardner-Johnson's career has slipped, because he was a key guy for that Eagles Super Bowl. And, he had a couple of really good years in Philadelphia.
He did. Also a guy that seems like every other place, though, that he goes to doesn't, I think he was the Lions before. He doesn't last too long in any spot with that, to your point on the accountability function of this. Looking a little bit at the defense, though, I do want to get back to the offense on a couple of things still, but I do want to talk about the defense with MJ Stewart back there, Kalen Bullock back there, former USC safety. How has his development been as a guy really tall, long, coming out of USC? who had some upper end talent. He's coming into his final year of college, and people were talking about him as being maybe a first-round pick. Didn't have a bad year in his final year of college, but maybe didn't quite get to the spot of solidifying himself as a first-round pick. How has been his development?
Bullock looked like a steal last year. This year, it's been hard to tell because he was the guy that was with the Gardner Johnson issues. And we're like, wait a second, Keelan Bullock looks like he's playing real bad all of a sudden. What's going on? And so I'm going to be interested to see what happens going forward. He was getting some interceptions last year. That hasn't happened yet this season, but I want to see how this plays out a little bit with him right now. We don't know, but the Texans defense been great. So it's hard to really point too many fingers out there at anybody in particular. I mean, that's really, if you want to really narrow it down for the Texans as to what makes their defense great, just there's not a lot of guys that you can point at and go, God, I wish we had somebody better right there, or he is a problem. The linebackers are solid. The defensive line, you have 2 elite pass rushers, you got 2 elite cornerbacks, and you got pretty solid safety. I mean, the only thing that Texans fans really are concerned about maybe is depth in the secondary. There's not a lot there. Jimmy Ward is trying to come back from injury, the veteran, but he's always banged up. So that might be something they look for a backup maybe at the trade deadline or something like that. But that's one of the things that makes this defense so good is I don't know who you pick on. I don't know where you go. Like you're Seattle, I don't know which guy you want to go after. There's not, you were talking on my show about Jalen Petrie. He's quietly this really, really solid player that's improved drastically over his seasons with the Texans. I mean, the jump that he made, and especially when D'Amico came in, he made this huge jump from his rookie year to his second year with D'Amico. And we've seen him, just is not just what he does on the field, but they love his leadership. He's one of those guys, eats, breathes, chews football. He's that type of player. And, it's exciting because he's a Houston area product too. So, definitely somebody that everybody could get behind.
Fell in love with his tape out at Baylor, and he was a guy that it's understandable for why he takes a little bit of time to develop, because he was kind of more in that rover role in Baylor. Is he a linebacker? Is he a slot? Is he going to play a little safety? Yes, from Baylor's standpoint. So then that guy's not had as much refinement to one singular position coming out of college. Henceforth, you probably give that guy a little bit more time when you start to lock him into kind of the position they do right now as that sort of super slot in this defense. And what a big feather in your cap when you can trust, especially with all these 12 personnels, to be able to trust to stay in nickel in those situations. A lot of defense across this league, Robbers, I'm watching tape, are going more into base in those situations, taking the nickel off the field, bringing a linebacker out there. You guys don't do that, though, do you?
Petrie is a linebacker. I mean, in a way, it's like having a linebacker out there, because you never know. One down, he's in coverage. The next down, where did he come from? And he'll, flash in out of nowhere and get a TFL or a sack or something like that. So he's sort of, this chess. He's like the queen in chess. Like you never know what he's going to do or which angle he's going to take or something like that. But the Texans defense going into the year, fans thought this could be the best defense in the NFL. And right now you can make the argument that they are. It gets lost in everything. It also gets, I don't know if people realize this, Brandon. I don't know if you realize this. You look at where the Texans are in point differential right now. They're 4th. They're 2-3, and they're 4th in point differential. The next team that is under 500 in point differential is 16th in the NFL in point differential. So that's where the Texans are. And of course, the last couple of weeks they beat up on the Titans and the Ravens and everybody. Oh, those teams are looking terrible and blah blah blah. But other teams didn't take care of the Ravens quite like the Texans did. I know Lamar Jackson didn't play, but I mean, it was just a dominant performance. I mean, CJ Stroud, there was his last 12 out of his last 13. I think I got this right. 12 out of his last 13 times that the Texans had the football with CJ Stroud at quarterback, because of course the backup came in at the end of the Ravens game, the Texans scored either touchdown or field goal. So going back to the Titans game, they scored, 3 touchdowns, I think, in the fourth quarter. And then the Ravens game, they scored every drive. I don't care what the defense is in the NFL. You're scoring every drive. Something's going on. The offense looked like, hot garbage the first 3 weeks. But they played some really good defenses. I mean, Tampa is no joke. The Rams are no joke. The Jags are no joke. So, I mean, these are teams that look like playoff teams and have got really good defenses. And, they were going up against some elite edge rushers and guys like that. I mean, Hines Allen, you guys saw a little bit of him. I'm not sure how he did against you guys, but he was a terror against our rookie left tackle. So, you had him. The Rams have got a really tough front seven. So, yeah, the Texans offense we're starting to see them turn a corner a little bit.
Well, and I think it's a great timing on your part, 'cause that is the part I wanted to kind of reverse back around here to the offense a little bit, is this offensive line. And I think you fleshed out very well, your position on this, so far as, where the narrative is at a little bit on this versus, what the reality might be as far as the issues here on this Texans offensive line. I will say that I watched quite a few Texan games last year, and that there's just, to me, still these moments that I see carrying over this year, not to as great a degree, but I think, as we talked about in the last show, some of this has been mitigated by your guys' commitment to run the ball, whether it's been super stupendously, you're getting a lot of yards or not, you're staying with it to keep those defenses at bay a little bit. And then the purposefulness by not only getting the ball out of his hands fast, being CJ Stroud, but getting the ball out of his hand as fast as almost any quarterback in the entire sport. So it's almost to a very extreme degree they're doing it, not just merely on kind of the fast side of things. And I guess so. I want, if I can, for you to kind of flesh out for me that this line from a talent wise is kind of good enough. Because you talked about we've got two different sides of this season that have showed up. Last 2 games, first 3 games, quality of opponents, a bit of this, but maybe also which team are we looking at here? Which team might, show up with this? You have the Laramie Tunsil trade. I understand Laramie's not maybe the same player he might have been once at one time with the Dolphins, and that there's a lot of reason for that. But then it did seem to be where you go, okay, we're going to go to Cam Robinson. We'll draft Arcee, who I thought in scouting him, he was more of a better guy sorted over to be a right tackle than really maybe a left tackle, though a young guy with maybe some potential there. But it also didn't seem like you guys did a whole lot to really hammer this offseason, including the thing that I couldn't really understand, which is doubling down on the 2 wide receivers who you really haven't used a lot of so far this season, rather than more trying to target an offensive line and really beef this thing up for CJ, really give him a secret service of a protection crew.
Yeah, the fan base was sort of mixed on the drafting of the wide receivers over maybe getting another offensive line. There's a thought, I think, nationally, the Texans haven't cared about the offensive line. Over the last 5 or 6 years, they've drafted 5 guys in the first or second round on the offensive line. They've drafted 3 tackles, a guy that's basically kind of a center guard, and they've drafted another guard. So when you look at the offensive line, they've definitely invested draft picks in the offensive line. Just some of them haven't worked out. And I went back to look at projections, because I'm like, well, was Caserio just an idiot drafting guys that he was projecting that? But you look at draft boards, and outside of Juice Scruggs, who's the starting left guard right now and probably the biggest weakness in the offensive line, if you ask most Texans fans right now. But he took over for Laken Tomlinson, which was a guy they went out, veteran they got out in the
we know Laken.
Just hasn't worked out.
We know Laken.
So yeah, you guys know him. But Tomlinson just was bad, so they've gone to Juice Scruggs, and Scruggs has looked a little bit better, but it's still not great. Scruggs was the one guy that, if you looked at the boards, they overdrafted. So they've invested draft picks in there. They haven't got free agents, but when I look around, a lot of times when you go out and get free agent offensive linemen, it doesn't go well a lot of the time. I mean, I don't know. I just, that's something that you can debate about, but they went and got Cam Robinson, but Cam Robinson, I also felt like was, okay, we're going to get somebody if we can find somebody that we're more confident in the draft. And they picked Arcee, and they seem to be more confident in Arcee. At least he beat him out in camp. So they went with Arcee instead at left tackle. It's sometimes you have to go out and get that free agent because you don't know what you're going to get in the draft. You don't know where it's going to land in the draft. And so the wide receivers, no, don't fall off the wagon. they're playing more. They're coming on. The young guys that they picked, Higgins, very talented. Noel, extremely talented. He's been awesome on special teams. And there's been calls to, get him more involved in the offense for sure, by, the onlookers. But yeah, I think the offensive line, I don't know if people understand all the machinations of what's going on. What I can tell you is whether you like PFF, whether you respect it, I look at the numbers typically, and there's not too many times where I go, that doesn't fit at all with what I'm seeing. And Titus Howard is one of the best graded right tackles in the NFL. He's been fantastic. Ed Ingram, reclamation project from the Vikings that was once drafted relatively high, they've turned him around. He's one of the best graded right guards in the NFL. So the Texans' right side looks really good. This offensive line coach, Cole Popovich, knew about a little bit Jake Andrews from the Patriots that they drafted in the 4th round, injury plagued the first 2 years. He gets let go. The Texans pick him up. He's been pretty solid as a center. So, it's the left side, I would say that's what to watch, the left side and what happens over there. Ursary got worked by Josh Hines Allen in the Jaguars game, and they didn't give him enough help, to what I thought he would need over there. Speed rushers, I think, might be his weakness. And then, what Juice Scruggs does against you guys is going to be a pretty big deal at left guard. If there's a way to attack the Texans, that's it. But, it's a complete package. One thing also, talked about it on my show this week, Brandon, CJ Stroud got rid of the ball in 2.57 seconds, I want to say, on average in the Jags game, or in the last game against the Ravens. That's the best of his career. And he has improved drastically at how quick he's getting rid of the ball this year. 0.3 seconds roughly faster than he was getting rid of it the first two seasons. So that was an area of concentration from new OC Nick Caley. So keep an eye out for that. I think the Texans are going to, they're going to be trying to get rid of the ball quickly to counter whatever Seattle's trying to do.
Yeah, it will be a very key point of this matchup, especially because with Seattle, they don't blitz a lot. So can he find those quick routes in kind of the heart of the jungle, so to speak, where as far as there's a lot of trees in that jungle, there's going to be a lot of bodies out there in that secondary you got running through, whereas some of these matchups made this year, there's been more of a confining down in the pocket, maybe a little more willing to try to blitz him at times to try to get after that offensive line with certain defenses so far this year. But that's really one of the keys. And I don't know how it'll play out exactly. It'll be one of the interesting chess matches. Like, does Mike decide to maybe press some of the zone coverages up tighter, shallower, and then risk a Nico Collins having the top, being able to take the deep ends off if you're going to squeeze those down for the quick short routes? Because if you're getting the ball out in 2.5 seconds, you're not usually throwing the 9 route. You're not putting a post route usually down the field. It's probably going to be on the shorter side as a throw goes. So it will, which way do you anticipate from a DC side, knowing walking in that they are going to make that the point of emphasis for them?
The guy that you might look out for, because he's been really good this year, catching big first down passes from CJ, is Dalton Schultz, the tight end. Last year, he had some injuries. He didn't make many of them public. And then he talked a little bit about them in camp. I'll trust him that there was some things that was going on with him from a physical side last year. And we see a different guy this year, both in the pass game and in his blocking. He just looks night and day difference, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if every Texan, he's kind of been a whipping boy a little bit, because the expectation for him has been high, and they just didn't feel like the effort was there, blocking wise last year at times. But that's somebody that I would definitely look for, because I think every single game he's caught at least 3 balls. And it seems like this year, when you need that first down in a big situation, that's who Stroud wants to go to is Dalton Schultz. So, him and Nico will be that's the safety blankets for him. And, potentially Woody Marks out of the backfield as well, the rookie running back.
Well, it's been my take with Dalton too, is he is more H-backy than he's more inline, right? He's a little bit more like, that's why you had Cade Stover in there, is theoretically you wanted to run the 12 and I know he's on IR, but then Cade could be your hammer and the run blocker, and then you could have the mismatch weapon, kind of like we try to do with Elijah Arroyo, where Arroyo's our H-back rather than our inline tight end. Sort of a similar thing there with Dalton. Is that wrong, or is Dalton more of an inline guy?
Well, the issue with Bobby Slowick last year was that guy was used way too much as a blocker. They were putting him inside, bringing guys in. He couldn't block anybody. I'm like, get him outside, let him take somebody out of the equation. We have a hard enough time when you're not bringing all these different guys in the box, and Dalton can't block anybody. So, that was an issue. And you mentioned Stover. I mean, that's somebody we thought they were going to miss because, he's a much better blocker and he's got real potential. So yeah, you make a great point there. He's not somebody that as an H back, and luckily they're using him more, in the passing game this year than they were last year, I think. And they're putting him outside. It's just that's where he needs to be. I mean, the Texans aren't going to have success if he's, right up close to the line of scrimmage.
Fans have got to be fair with that kind of player too. Look, we did this here with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was playing 70% of the times out as a slot wide receiver with New Orleans. What did we do? We brought him in here and turned him into an inline tight end and asked him to block at a heavy amount of time. And it's like, look, they are tight end sized bodies, and they are technically tight ends. They are, and they can do some tight end stuff. But there's a difference with those inline guys who get their butt in the dirt in there and they take on a defensive end and they can control them. And there's guys in the league that can do that tight end position, and other guys that can't, but that's okay because you want that mismatch guy like Dalton can be as a guy in space working against, a linebacker who can't run or a safety that doesn't have enough size. That's where he can really get after you, and that's where he makes his money to me. But again, he hasn't been a guy for me that I've studied, deeply on. So it's kind of more of a guess than anything else.
Yeah, Dalton had a huge block against the Ravens last game for the Texans, and so that was something even noticed by the broadcast crew. I'm like, oh, they noticed a Dalton Schultz block. That's a big deal. Dalton getting some love for his blocking. So that definitely good to see.
And I do, for the record, I do like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. It's not a representation of those being bad picks for your guys. I think that those are going to be good players long term. Hell, you got two teammates, so they're going to work together with great chemistry into the future, having already a couple of years at the back when you're working option routes or reads or whatnot. It was just, and I make the same problem in my Hawk team. So I'm consistent about this, Robert, because we did the same kind of cutesy stuff where it's just like, look, if you've hammered it before a lot and that those guys were widely considered this, but they didn't turn into that, you keep hammering it until you get it right. Because your most important asset is this quarterback. Your most important asset to getting you to the Super Bowl in the future will be this quarterback and him remaining upright. And I look over at a team in Cincinnati and Joe Burrow who just didn't have anything prepared before the guy got in there. They're just like, let's just go get the guy. And I mean, your Texans kind of did the same. Can't blame them. This is the way the NFL goes at times, which is like, do you have the preparations in place? The hell with that. Do we have the right coach? The hell with that. Do we have the right offensive coordinator? The hell with that. Just go get the guy. That's fine. But then you need to be really putting the rush bush at the front here to get this guy that protection in front to make sure you're really keeping him clean. Burrow tears his ACL the first year, has been hammered every single year that he's there with Cincinnati, including the Super Bowl year. And then once again, this year gets broken very early on. And I hope your Texans team don't head down that same route. It's good they're getting it. And I know Ed Ingram, like you said, and Howard were giving you some at least good performance. What happened if those guys hadn't stepped forward, though, and surprised you by this performance and what this line would be right now, right, Robert? Because it was like a bit of a risk to that was going to be the way that this played out with those two guys being so far in a manageable place. But on the Texans in the future on this, into this next offseason, it's not cutesy time. It's meat and potatoes time. Am I off my rocker on this, or do you see it a similar way?
I do, but also at the same time, I just, what I've seen from Cole Popovich as an offensive line coach means something. Let me just take everybody back. David Carr was the first player that the Texans drafted, quarterback. And if everybody remembers, that guy was absolutely demolished, killed. I mean, he was a piñata back there. The offensive line was a joke for years. They drafted guys, but it just, it wasn't working. They couldn't do anything. And there's a guy named Alex Gibbs, one of the best offensive line coaches, comes in and just, it's night and day. He turns everything around. Offensive line coaches in this league matter way more than I think fans understand. You look at Skarnecchia and what he did in New England. You look at what's going on in Philadelphia. I mean, these teams that have offensive line coaches, it's not a coincidence that they tend to be very, very good if they have a very good offensive line coach. And so, it's about chemistry. It's about, having this way of getting guys to work together and a style, and this is how we're going to do things. And I can tell that that's what Popovich is doing. Do you need some talent? Absolutely. I mean, going back to the Oilers, I remember, they would go to the playoffs every year. Who did they have? Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak, two Hall of Fame guys that they drafted high in the first round. So, yeah, it's great to do that, but also offensive line coaches matter. Look, Ursary, you're going to see a rookie left tackle. I don't know if he's going to look real good against Seattle. It's been a little here and there. I know you're not a big fan of Ursary, but
I love
I
Ursary.
would.
No, I like him on the right thing. I thought he's a right tackle. I loved it. He's young. He's gonna be great. No, I had a blue chip grade on him. I liked him as a right tackle because I just didn't know if he was going to quite be able to hang with those blindside edge rushers that are hyper twitchy. I saw him as more of kind of that hammer, pure, more of the powerish right tackle, traditionally speaking.
I'm going to take you back to a guy, Dwayne Brown. His rookie year, it was not good. Seattle fans remember Dwayne Brown. The Texans fans were worried, extremely worried after year one. And then they coached him and they got him up to speed. And I with Ursary, I feel like, this kid's background, he's been through a lot. I mean, his family, what he's gone through, having to deal with like moving from home to home. And, that there was all sorts of stuff that was going on with him as a kid. And the kid, he works hard. If he can figure it out, he's going to figure it out. Cause this is somebody that's been through hell and back in his life and through a lot of adversity. So, I've got confidence in him, but yeah, I want to stress this because I know it's a national thing of like, oh, the Texans offensive line, it's a joke and they're not giving Stroud. There were multiple things. It's an offensive coordinator issue. It was an offensive line coach issue. It was running backs and tight ends that didn't know what they were doing. Stroud was holding on to the ball. A lot of times he'll go back to pass, and instead of like moving up in the pocket, and when guys are coming from the outside, he would move back and take a 15-yard sack instead of moving up, giving himself maybe an extra half a second or not taking 15-yard sacks. So, yeah, there is a lot going on. And these last 2 weeks, it's hard to tell. This is going to be a real litmus test for the Texans in this game. You guys are our first. We have a schedule right now coming up. Were these last two games for real? It's the Ravens and the Titans. They stink. Nobody gives any credit to the Texans for these two. Now we're going to find out. We're going to find out where the Texans really are.
Indeed. And I think with Irsay, just to double back one more time on that, I do think that even if he doesn't quite light the world on fire as left tackle, he'll be an outstanding right tackle as like a 4. He's a really young guy too to add on top of this. You talk about having a guy with room for growth. It's those guys that come in the league at 21. You got to have a real good imagination with them because give them that time, they get that extra couple of years and you're going to really have that top-notch player versus a bit of the older prospect that comes out as kind of more of the finished product. There's not a lot more baking left in that particular cake. So I think Irsay is going to be great for you. It was the look-see on this one, I think, that locked this in is you already had the Texans looking as they looked last year, which all the points you raised are completely valid, and I can understand it. It's then getting into the offseason, you're moving Tunsil, your left tackle, for a very moderate amount of returns, and then you're going to Cam Robinson on that other side of it. And then it's like, Cam was awful for the Vikings last year when he filled in, really. I mean, you turn on the tape with them and he's getting Sam killed back there. And you're going, you guys looked at this on paper and said, this is this, and it's worked and they made it work. But it was just one of those moments where you went, how does the math on this exactly, Texans,
Tunsil was needed to be a leader in that offensive line room as a Pro Bowl type talent. They didn't like how he was leading. He was not leading very well. He was also a penalty machine. He led the NFL in penalties last year with like 16 or 17 as an offensive lineman. I think he might have led the entire NFL. I know he led the offensive line. And we're talking about killer drive penalties. Like when you have 16 or 17 penalties and your offense is struggling, that's usually the end of your drive. A holding penalty, an illegal procedure penalty. And there was, early in the year, he was jumping over and over again, claiming he didn't understand some, a new rule they were implementing or whatever.
Oh, the butt rule.
And this was not just last year. This had been going on, and it doesn't show up in PFF grades. It doesn't show up when you see him on tape. The penalties, you're like, you don't consider that, but the penalties were a killer. And the other thing is the Texans' run game in the last few years has been terrible. Well, it hurts when Tunsil just seems like a guy that's not interested in run blocking. Great pass blocker, not a good run blocker, and almost disinterested. You felt like at times. Ursery, you say whatever you want to about the Rook, but he's ready to get dirty. He doesn't, he doesn't have that same sort of attitude. So, and Tunsil's a guy. The other thing is, I mean, there's other considerations that fans outside of Houston might not get. Every year he wants a new contract, and that gets old. Like I want to be paid, I want to be the best played offensive lineman in the NFL again next. And at some point, because Caserio was just like, yeah, we don't need to do this we don't need to go through that every single year. And it wasn't like he was an all pro. He was a Pro Bowler some years he wasn't. He's definitely one of the best left tackles, but this is not a guy that was a definite future Hall of Fame left tackle. He's a very good left tackle, but there are things that he's not good at. Penalties and run blocking were an issue without question. And with all the young offensive linemen that they've had, you just needed some better leadership from the guy that you needed to be the leader there. And they just decided, well, we're going to reallocate, not only get rid of somebody that might have been hurting our locker room, but also we'll reallocate, somebody that we continue to up his salary, having to pay him 20, 30, 40, at some point, like I'm one of those people, like you don't have to have a bunch of, $30 and $40 million offensive linemen. That's really not where you want to put the money into a good football team.
No, I am a big guy on you draft him and you hammer him in the draft, and you commit when you have your quarterback, when you have the guy, like you got the guy, you commit to getting that line right. But I agree with you. The pathway's not in free agency or just spending a ton of money every which way up loose. I would say it's more to the drafting being the onus and building it up right, getting the chemistry and continuity factor built into that, which helps out the performance as a whole. And it's just really making that a point of emphasis when you have that QB to me, because you can figure out the receiver position to me. You can figure out running back position to be a little bit when you've got the quarterback that's this good, where you got a guy that can elevate his supporting cast. And I think that CJ he's got protection. He can be that guy that does support the cast. It's just one of my real, keys for him, where he has mobility. He's got an underrated amount of mobility in the pocket and move around a bit. Something he showed at Ohio State in that Georgia game, their final game there at the year, where he really got away from pressure that whole game, showing you he had it. After the whole year, he was so clean in the pocket. But he showed you that whole last year in Ohio State too. When you give him those clean pockets, you give him that time to sit back there and start throwing darts, he's going to light a defense up. So it's just one of those places I probably get a little too obsessed with on that, Robert, but it's one of those places I wonder about them if they can put that together for him in the long term. Not as much of even in the immediacy now, but just long term with CJ.
I don't know what you think about this, but the Texans start off 0-3. I mean, just offensively, they didn't look like they were really gelling. The chemistry was there. I get so frustrated that teams don't want to play guys in the preseason. And this is a chance to really gain chemistry. Everybody's so worried about injuries, but do injuries matter when you're giving away 2 or 3 games early in the season because you haven't developed offensive line chemistry or you haven't developed chemistry? I mean, I don't get that. I don't understand it. You could say, well, we're doing stuff in practice all the time and they're working, but you working in a game situation on an NFL field where, there's bright lights and all of that stuff going on. I get it. There might not be guys out there on the other teams that are going to play on Sundays, but just going through that repetition matters to me. It just amazes me that NFL teams have just said, forget it. We're not playing anybody in the preseason anymore.
Well, I think when you add on top of it with what we know from the CBA negotiations, which is that the players have ripped padded practices and practices in general away from teams as a way to prepare them for game days too, in addition to your point on this, right? So you've already in the off season, less OTAs and less of no more 2-a-days. And you can only have so many days of padded practice throughout the whole entire year. All the more reason you think that you would need more of that time to be able to take advantage of those moments when you can have live fire and get out there and really get these guys tested and true. I'll reckon a guess on this with two things. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm with you on this, Robert, but I'm going to give you two guesses as two things as what I think are the big factors here. One is that you get sometimes these players doing a little bit too much in preseason. They're trying to earn a roster, earn a spot. Maybe they'll do something a little bit on the line with dirty wise. We had our guy Uchenna Nwosu got taken out last year on a dirty play in preseason and part of his opening snap counts. And you watch that as a coach and you go, do we really need to go? That just scares him away right there. And then this is the one I wonder about here with your Houston team, who has the high aspirations, and that maybe there's a little bit of a look-see on this as well, of trying to game the system in a way where you're peaking at that right end part of the year, whereas you're getting into the playoffs, now you're playing at your best football, as opposed to I get them properly up and ready to roll, and I've got them hard lined, and we in a tense training camp, and we ran fully hard. And then maybe by week 8 or 9, you're kind of having the team sort of start to lose a little bit of the gas out of the tank there at that point. And they're not able to play at their best because they've been worn down a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just getting guys. I'm not as worried about them playing 100%, 120% hard. I just want them to get into that rhythm and to know, okay, we're in a preseason game. Okay, where is this guy coming from? Let's work on our communication between the left tackle and the left guard, the center, and whether it's stunts. And I know they don't run a ton of stunts in the preseason, but I mean, just getting in some sort of chemistry with your other offense. I mean, this matters more to the offensive line. Chemistry is the most important thing on a team, I think. I mean, offensive line is such a big deal. Nobody wants to talk about it unless stuff is going wrong. But yeah, that chemistry and just getting that repetition, that one after the other. I'm not saying, they got to be going playing as hard as it's the Super Bowl in, preseason game 2. But I mean, can they play more than a series or two? Is that possible in the entire preseason, or more than a series or two in the second preseason game, basically the last sort of dress rehearsal, you would call it, because we know the third preseason game at this point is meaningless.
It is. And again, I'm with you on this. I think that your points are all very salient ones. And especially when you're rebuilding an offensive line like you guys were this year, all the more reason you got to get those extra snaps in there to get that cohesion and chemistry and continuity. Called my 3 C's for offensive line. It only comes about with time and reps. You can't really microwave it with just the great coaching. It needs that time to kind of have it really develop through. So I'm with you on it. It does kind of throw me off a little bit. These coaches are just so injury fearful at every turn. It seems like that's really the main driver, I think, at the forefront of all this. Let me get a quick sponsor shout out here. It's a good time right now. I want to thank the sponsor of this show, which is going to be Sleeper. Sorry, I got to put my thing here. Let me get this right. So I got Sleeper. Let's see if my man Robert here likes my picks. Of course, I can't get this thing to work right today, but that's okay. So I went on my 3 picks here today. I'm going to get your call on the final one here. But we went with CJ Stroud at more than 15.5 yards rushing. You like that one? Just a couple scrambles, he gets it.
Yeah, he made the decision late last year that he was going to maybe run with a little bit more purpose. I'm trying to remember who got in his head. It might have been, it was one of the vets last year thought he needed to run the ball more. And since the end of last year, he's running the ball more. He had a big one against the Ravens. Was it 40? I think it might have been his longest rushing attempt, it was 40 something yards, almost got in the end zone, longest of his career. So why not? Yeah, go ahead, and that sounds good.
Let's go with that. I'm going to go under on the Jack Charbonnet. I think you guys are going to get a steady dose of Walker, and Sharps has had a harder time this year in finding some holes. So I think it's going to be a little bit more. We're going to try to throw a little bit more to even. I think Walker's going to get a little more of the carries here in this one. And then I was going to have you make the call on the Woody Marks. You brought him up earlier. So we've got him at 26.5 yards rushing. We can take the over or under on that. Which way you going?
I would say the over. I mean, it's tough because you guys have such a great run defense, but that doesn't seem like a lot of yards to me. And they didn't use him a ton in the rushing game against the Ravens, so maybe they might use him a little bit more It's not something that I would be super confident in. Let me put it that way. I'll say the over, but I'm not confident.
All right. So he's going to go the over, not confident, but you can 10.36x your money on that kind of bet. Go lay that down with Sleeper today, the number one sports app that is in the game. They've got a 100% match right now. When you use my code NEST on the Sleeper app for the first time, they'll match you up to $100 of your first deposit. So 100% up to $100. That's $100 from me to you. Sponsor the show at the same time. They've also got a little what we call freebie pick into the mix here. And what I mean by a freebie pick is you can get a $20 additional kicker in on this one just by creating a login. So $120 from me to you to the best sports app there is in the game. Get in your daily fantasy, mix and match baseball, football, basketball on the horizon. Go out there, win yourself some money. If not fantasy, get in the over the unders like I'm setting up here and go out there, earn some bucks, use your football knowledge, baseball knowledge to your benefit with the postseason rolling and going along. And thank you to Sleeper for sponsoring the show. It's very much appreciated. And thanks for helping me out on the picks there, Robert. I do thank you for that. And again, folks, if you can for me, we got a link here to Robert's YouTube channel here right at the top of the description section below. So if you can show us some love here, coming in for an hour of his time out here, give him some love back on his end, sub up. It's free to you to do so. It doesn't cost you anything. He's covering all Houston sports. You can stay locked in and knowing what's going on right now with Houston sports by subbing up today with Robert. And I really thank you again for doing this. A couple final things. We don't play a lot out here, Robert. And last time we played, you didn't have this guy. Can you speak to the Hawk fans a little bit about how good Nico Collins is?
I would say he's top 3 in the NFL. Just love Nico Collins. I mean, he does everything. Every type of route. Definitely can beat you deep. I can't even remember him dropping a pass. I don't even remember it in his career yet. I'm sure he's had to drop at least one, but I have no memory of it. The only thing that slowed him down so far in his career is just, every year it seems like there's an injury that knocks him out for a few games. Usually it's soft tissue. Last year, he had I want to say it was like a 50-yard touchdown and pulled a hamstring on the touch. I'm like, only Nico would get hurt on a 50-yard touchdown. And then we lost him for the next few games. And yeah, the Texans also, one of the issues with their offense was just the wide receivers. I mean, they had this incredible wide receiver group with Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins. And after the first 2 games, they didn't have any of the 3 play together for a full game the rest of the year, including the playoffs. Tank's career, of course, in jeopardy. He's trying to make a comeback. But yeah, that's how good Nico is. Like on a ripped up hamstring, he still can beat you on a touchdown pass. So love Nico. And he's one of the rare quote unquote diva. He's not even a diva. He's one of the rare wide receivers that's not a diva. He's just somebody that you don't have to worry about it. And they got him on a sort of value contract. He could have, like a lot of receivers, he could have held out for probably even more money than he got. So yeah, love Nico.
And I got kind of, when I see him, sort of Julio Jones-ish vibes. Is that a fair comp for you with him?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I don't know how much I really saw of Jones on a week-to-week basis, but yeah, that there could be some similarities there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of wide receivers,
Yeah.
you got Largent right next to you.
Oh
And
yeah.
I got to mention this because I grew up a Houston
right.
Oilers fan. And
Guys gave him away for free.
we just apparently Bum thought they had too many wide receivers. There was a numbers game, and there was some stuff going on. I want to say there was some stuff going on with him personally that first camp that he was in. He's drafted 4th round, I want to say, by the Oilers, and I loved Steve Largent. And when you find out, because I find out, as I'm older, oh yeah, we drafted that guy, and he didn't even play a down for the Oilers. It just killed me. And I mean, just a huge fan of Steve Largent. How could you not be? Largent,
Yeah.
and there was another guy that the Oilers drafted, Charlie Joyner, was a big fan of him. And that was somebody they traded after year 3, or I think it was during year 4. And, he was getting injured, and there was just some other complications, I think. And he really didn't take off. I think he goes to the Bengals, and then the Bengals end up giving him to the Chargers. And, it was a few years in. It's kind of like a Sam Darnold situation. A few years in, all of a sudden, hey, this guy's really good. How did that happen? Where did these other teams go wrong with him?
Yeah. Well, and I think to give your Oilers some credit on this, if I'm definitely reaching into the memory books on this, but I believe you had Billy White Shoes Johnson there at that time, and then you also had Ken Burrows, who was a Pro
Yeah,
Bowl receiver the prior year to drafting Largent. So like he could not been those top two guys, and that's on a run. I think that's with Earl Campbell in a very run centric offense. In addition to it. And you're right about, I think he was taking care of his family, like his parents had passed. And so he was like taking care of his siblings at that time, which was really causing some issues with him. But it's not as much of a like brain dead thing from the Oilers standpoint that they made the trade because of that to me, because Billy was a good player and Ken was underrated. He had kind of a short little run of being a really good receiver in the league. And, you weren't running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets back then. It was a lot of that I formation base package stuff, so there just wasn't a lot of room there for him, but they did kind of just give him away too for like, I think 11th rounder or something for margin at the time.
Yeah, I want to say maybe it was an 8th rounder, but yeah, you might be right. And the other thing is they had somebody that came on. I can't remember if he was with the Oilers when Largent was there in camp, but Mike Renfro. Renfro was somebody that made some big catches during the Love You Blue era. Renfro was in a lot of ways responsible for instant replay because against the Steelers in the AFC Championship game, he caught what looked like a touchdown on replay. No replay back in 79-80 season, and they think that might have helped instigate it. Wasn't the next year, but a few years down the line, they kept citing that play because it was a real momentum shifter in the 79-80 Oilers playoff game against the Steelers. And of course, the Oilers, if they win that game, they're in the Super Bowl facing the Los Angeles Rams at that time. So good chance to win the Super Bowl. The Steelers were the roadblock for the Oilers for a couple of years.
Do you remember where you were on the Buffalo Bill Oiler comeback?
Oh yeah. No, I was at my best friend's house. He was the guy. I started my podcast a little over 12 years ago, and he was my original co-host, my best friend from high school. I was at his house, and you're beside yourself. And I don't think many people understand from a Houston perspective, like how much heartache that they had going into that for the previous, say, 13 years. The 80 and 86 playoffs for the Astros are two of the great playoff series of all time, one against the Phillies, one against the Mets. And the one against the Mets ended up in 16 innings where they lose in the Astrodome. That there's a book written about that's the greatest game ever played. The 80 team had one, of course, against the Phillies ended up going to win the championship, but the Astros were up 2-0 and then dropped the next 3, including the last game at home that Nolan Ryan started. And then you went through the 5 Slamma Jamma, including just everybody that was my age. You're a kid in tears over the NC State. Everybody looks at it from the NC State, but from a U of H side, it was an absolute killer. And then we had the Oilers, just one time after another time after another time, just not being able to get to the Super Bowl. They went to the playoffs, I want to say 10 times between 1978 and 1993, something like that. And they could never get to the Super Bowl. In fact, a Houston NFL team hasn't got to a conference championship game, not the Super Bowl, a conference championship game in 45 years. And we've had an NFL team for all but about 6 years of the Super Bowl era, that the time between the Oilers and the Texans. So everybody talks about the Browns. The Lions get a lot of love for the drought and what's going on with them, but do not forget that many of the Houston fans bridge the Oilers and the Texans, and longtime Houston fans understand that this city is, to never have gone to a Super Bowl and haven't even gone to a conference championship game of 45 years is just that's pretty amazing in the NFL. It just seems like everybody gets there. I mean, the Jags. Nobody thinks of this great franchise. The Jags were just in an AFC Championship game a few years ago. They've been in a couple. They haven't even been a franchise for all that, just a little bit longer than the Texans. So, yeah, it's incredible.
Well, what I hear in that, Robert, is you guys are due. That's what I hear in all that. Eventually it's got to come away and come back around to it. Were you halfway into that game like we got that in the bag, or were you like, ooh, we're still in Buffalo, it's cold, dome team, this thing could still twist on us?
It felt like it was in the well, the thing was, people might think, oh, they were up 35-3 at halftime. No, they were up 28-3, and then they have a touchdown like halfway through the third quarter. It was halfway through the third quarter, and they're up 35-3. So, that's how quickly that game just turned on a dime. And of course, you had OJ's at the game. He's in the elevator, making fun of the Oilers. Just I've heard those stories too, to add insult to injury and stuff. But and to do it, and also, I mean, against a backup quarterback, it'd been one thing if it was Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly was actually kind of a little bit loved in Houston because he started his career with the Houston Gamblers as a pro.
That's right. He was one of those CFL guys on that front of it. And yeah, I just asked, I know I'm not trying to bring a bad memory on it, but that was one of the more incredible comebacks you'll ever see. One more question on the Nico thing I wanted to ask you on that. Take away the soft tissue injuries or take away the injury side of it. You get a pick of your prime of Andre Johnson or Nico Collins. Who are you taking?
God, what a conundrum that is. The thing about Andre is he never had a good quarterback. He never had anybody close to it. I mean, Matt Schaub was his best quarterback, guys. Matt Schaub could not throw the ball,
10 yards,
50 yards practically. Yeah. I mean, he had no arm. It's amazing. I mean, people do not understand how good Andre Johnson was, considering what he had with the Texans over those years, the numbers that he put up. And I mean, just it's unbelievable. And the thing about it is nobody really knows about him because he was the one wide receiver that just didn't like to talk, didn't showboat, didn't do anything. I mean, the moment of his career that people like maybe know Andre for doing anything outlandish was when he was beating the hell out of Cortland Finnegan. I mean, that's the one thing. But, Andre didn't whine, didn't cry about it. He could have done all this sort of stuff. And just, it's, God, I don't know. It would help me if I saw Andre with like a good this guy with a good quarterback, we're talking about, just, he would have destroyed some record books. I mean, if you put him in any sort of decent offense with a guy that had an arm, I mean, it's just, it would have been unbelievable. I mean, he's a great deep threat. Who was going to throw it to him? They had nobody to throw deep to him.
So I didn't hear an answer on that. Am I getting Andre if I'm gleaming off your answer there? I can't let you sit on the fence on this one, Robert.
Oh, brother. I would say Andre, but it's too hard. And DeAndre Hopkins in his prime was no joke either. I mean, we've had some great, I mean, that's the one thing the Texans have had, some incredible wide receivers.
Yeah. Well, even in the back in the day, the Oilers days, Slaughter and Givens, and with the electric shuffle. Didn't he have the electric shuffle you do with the touchdown, Givens? Am I thinking the right guy?
Oh, yeah. The electric slide. Yeah.
The electric
slide.
Yeah.
Givens was fun. And, they basically were the precursor in a lot of ways. I mean, you can debate some different teams, but they were a precursor in a lot of ways to more the modern offense, because they were doing the run and shoot and the 4 wide and a lot of what you see that became sort of commonplace. I mean, it's not quite as much as it seems like it was a few years ago, but I mean, they really changed the game in a lot of ways with those guys. Haywood Jeffries was maybe the most talented guy of that era. Givens, pretty small guy. Jeffries, big, tough, made the tough catches and stuff like that. But yeah, that group of wide receivers with Warren Moon, the early 90s group, was really, really incredible.
And that was tough was Warren with that run and shoot, because that was not a heavy pass protecting setup. You went 4 wide a lot of the time, and that kept that lighter offensive line. So he had to stand tall in the pocket, especially if they brought a blitz with a free rusher and just, and he was tough as hell in that way. But it's one thing about that offense. It wasn't the best at getting you a lot of chippers or double teams on the prime pass rushers.
Yeah, you mentioned the Bills game, but that was sandwiched in between. The Oilers had a 21-6 lead in the playoffs against John Elway's Broncos, And then Elway pulled off one of his classic comebacks up in Denver. And then the year after that, they had won their last, I believe it was last 10 or 10 of their last 11 games. They were the hottest team in the NFL. Their defense was led by Buddy Ryan. They had Moon at quarterback. I mean, it was super. You look at that roster, it was loaded with talent. And they have a home game against Joe Montana, who's close to 40 at the time. His elbow was being held together with baling wire and tape. And the Oilers were up 10-0 and somehow lost that game. So it was like 3 straight comfort behind losses in the playoffs for the Oilers. And then that was pretty much the end of the era. A couple years later, they left Houston.
It is a rough era not to get at least one from that. Such some good teams in there. And yeah, it's good you guys got the good team back, at least that the NFL didn't make you wait like Cleveland. That would have been awful. Well, let's wrap it up here. Give me the way you think this thing's going to play out. Give me a final score on this late Monday night football game.
Oh boy, I'm terrible with final scores, but
I am too.
We talked about it on my show. The spread's 3.5. I would be surprised if it was decided by more than 3. I mean, this feels like 2 relatively even teams that have a lot of things in common, and it's going to be, 2 teams leg wrestling each other, I feel like, and 16-13. I'll give Seattle the nod because it's a home game, but I could see it being 16-13 Texans. But that's what I'm guessing. It's going to be low scoring. It'll be a player or two, that's going to decide it. We talked about the time difference for the Texans. The one thing that I'm hoping is that, they'll get there a little bit early. The great thing for the Texans is they have 15 days, I should say, to prepare for this game. So 15 days. If Caley is a good offensive coordinator, he should be ready for just about everything because he has had plenty of prep time. He could sit there on his couch and watch the Seahawks last week and take notes and stuff like that. And, he's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So, we'll see how the Texans come out.
Yeah. Very hard to predict this one down. I think both of our 2 teams have given you both, some highs and lows that don't, as we're early on the season, don't quite let you get the pulse quite accurately, which just makes the trying to predict these harder to do. We haven't exactly dominated home recently. We've got 9 straight road wins, Robert, but we're 4-8 on conversely the other side of that at home recently. So it's been kind of not what you normally get with this. Don't have a lot of explanation for it, but I hope it's going to be just a fun, well-played game this upcoming week. And I agree with you. I think it's going to be a tight one, which will make it all that much funner as everybody feels like they're in it through the whole game. But thank you for doing this. Can you let them know? We've got a link down to your channel below in the description section. I hope everybody's already subbed up to that. If you can let them know as well, your X handle there, where they can find you out there on the old Twitter.
Yeah, at HST Podcast. Ask me questions there. My messages are open, so you can send me something if you want to. And, also Houston Sports Talk, it's on YouTube as well, and Spotify, Apple, all the places you get your podcast. But it's been a joyride for me. Like I said, I just started the 13th year for the show, 350 plus guests, over 1,600 episodes. I'm starting to lose track, but it's been quite a ride. We are I always say we are the longest running independent Houston sports podcast, especially on a weekly basis. So it's been a pretty amazing journey.
It's a great job that we have being able to do this, man. I think it's one of the best jobs you can be able to go out there and do. So it's such an honor to be able to do it and to chop it up with folks like yourself that are so well acquainted with your team. Nobody knows it better. Nobody knows what's going on better than folks like yourself covering the team like you do. I thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this, as I know you're also running around tremendously busy this time of year. So appreciate you coming in. We got to do this again when we play in the Super Bowl.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's go. Well, appreciate you guys watching today. If you can hit that like button for me, I would really appreciate it. If you could sub up for my man Robert's channel there, link down in the description section below. Quick link, just click it up, sub it up. It's free to you. Show them some love for coming back in here. We got the game out on Monday night late. We'll see which way it plays out from here, but both me and him do see this as being a tight one coming down the line, so one that you are going to want to watch. We will be back soon here, very soon at that, but until next time, please do not forget, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.